A strange stranger unexpectedly walked along a busy street, addressed passers-by with an unusual request, and caught their attention with his mysterious appearance. He asked if he could interest them in a couple of goods. The cozy cat showcased his wares to potential customers, aiming to please and generate interest in his unique range. Well, people were clearly not delighted because they were expecting some kind of legendary weapon or potion, but you wouldn't surprise them with just tomatoes. Unexpectedly for everyone, he expected exactly such a reaction. It turned out that it was an unusual tomato with amazing properties and an unusual taste. Having asked to open the status window, he clarified that this amazing tomato increases the speed of mana replenishment for 10 minutes. At that moment, the boy solemnly informed his faithful assistant, the rabbit, that they had enough tomatoes for today. Turning to the bee, he asked her for more honey, hoping to satisfy his taste preferences. They all gathered around and happily tasted the honey that the caring bee generously gave them. The cat, as it turned out, was named Theo, and he returned to the guy, completing his mysterious undertaking on the street. Announcing that he had sold everything, Theo showed a bag of coins, for which the guy praised him and rejoiced at his success. Jack laughed evilly, that was the name of the main character, and said that he would soon become famous. Jack noticed that the cat was too focused on earning money and became worried while talking to Theo about work-life balance. Next, Jack went to a certain rock, where he regularly noted the days he spent with Theo on this amazing adventure. Having been on this rock for 150 days, Jack was classified as a farmer leading a difficult life. 150 days after he found himself in this mysterious world, on the tower, Jack continued his fast-paced adventure. The guy asked if they were ready to begin the next stage of their exciting journey in this mysterious tower world. The story takes place in a world where the main character survives and overcomes difficulties, hiding in a mysterious tower full of mysteries and dangers. 10 years ago, a black tower with 99 floors suddenly appeared, seemingly out of nowhere, right in the middle of the cityscape. Suddenly, not only here, but also in the largest cities of other countries around the world, hundreds of towers appeared, breaking into reality. Scientists from all corners of the world rushed to study the towers, but only found that the 990-high tower was lined with an incredibly strong material that could not be penetrated even by an atomic bomb. And then one day people began to appear from one of the towers, as if penetrating through the wall, striking everyone with their mysterious appearance. It is clear that this caused a sensation in society, and a bunch of paparazzi were immediately assigned to these mysterious people, eager to solve the mystery. One of the guys explained that he suddenly fell into a black hole and woke up on the first floor of this mysterious tower. All 100 towers are connected into one. When you pass through the wall you find yourself on the first floor, and you choose a class and much more, but monsters appear from the second floor, and after clearing the floor, different rewards are given. There is a high chance that a ticket will drop, an item thanks to which they can enter and exit the tower. But ordinary people need a ticket to enter, but they will not be able to climb the floors. Suddenly, a woman, as if out of nowhere, poured out a mountain of gold right in the hall, surprising everyone with her inexplicable appearance. At that moment, they were sure of only one thing: conquering this mysterious tower promised wealth and a lot of money. The Association of the Awakened announced an increase in the price of a ticket. It will take from $150 million. Next week prices are expected to increase. It will already be $200 million. The woman could not understand why they were willing to pay $200 million, because they already risked their lives for the sake of money. The guy didn't even argue with the woman, realizing that every step in this mysterious tower could be his last. Jack constantly dreamed of buying a ticket, which might be the key to solving the mystery of this mysterious tower. But he didn't know if he would ever be able to afford this ticket, remaining an eternal prisoner of the mysterious tower. And then, out of nowhere, a portal appeared right behind him, making Jack think about unexpected possibilities. It was a phenomenon that captivated the first generation of awakened ones, forcing them to pay attention to the mysterious aspects of this world. The guy, on the contrary, instead of getting scared and starting to run away, was clearly very happy that he could be given a chance to risk his life to climb the tower. Meanwhile, the main character continued to stand, and nothing special happened, waiting for the solution to this phenomenon to become clear. The guy had to hurry to catch up with this mysterious portal, not to miss the opportunity to reveal the secrets of this world. After some time, he entered the portal and landed on the opposite side, feeling the thrill of an unknown world. Well, everything was clearly not as he expected. Because he appeared in some cave, this clearly meant that he had to go through a lot in order to win the reward. At this time, some dragon was sitting behind a crystal ball, which detected changes in their tower, closely monitoring what was happening. The dragon sought to find out the reason for what was happening, because the changes in their tower affected his world and his future. Jack could not understand how he ended up here, because he was the manager of this mysterious tower and was supposed to be in another world. The heroes spoke differently. Someone claimed that it was spacious and bright there, and you could also buy a lot of things. One of the girls most often took a potion. Some argue that the most important place is the training ground. In order to survive in the tower, you need to train a lot and improve your skills. The guy, obviously, did not expect that the tower would receive him so impressionably, offering such unusual tests and riddles. The guy clearly did not expect that the tower would greet him like that, offering such unusual tests and riddles, making him think about his path. He walked the entire length and breadth of the cave. There was no training ground, no store, none of the above, and cries for help didn't really help him either. But at that moment the guy had hope for salvation. His phone began to vibrate, bringing some hope and a possible solution to the problem. As it turned out, it was an alarm clock, and the guy realized that he had been in the cave for 24 hours. There was no connection, of course, but the clock was working. The main character decided to put away all the food he bought before he got into the tower, assessing his survival supplies. He had 1 bottle of water, 27 cherries, a tenth of green onions, 7 sweet potatoes, and 1 washed apple. Jack admitted that he loved eating apples for breakfast, because they were especially sweet, bringing joy to every bite in the morning. The guy ate to his fill, feeling how the food filled his stomach and gave him a feeling of satisfaction after several days of restrictions. He couldn't understand how long he would have to sit in this cave. He needed to find a way to get out before it was too late. The guy decided that he would save the apple cores in the hope of somehow growing food to continue surviving. Since the guy had 10 onions, he decided to plant them and eat the leaves. He also wanted to plant 3 tomatoes and 2 potatoes, and he would use the rest for food for himself. When the guy heard the sounds of monsters, he could not understand what kind of things were happening, because the monsters, it would seem, should have been on the higher floors. After which he raised his head and saw the blue moon sparkling before his eyes, creating a mysterious and bewitching sight. The guy sat down slightly, seeing how his body became weaker and weaker under the influence of the unusual blue moon. After that, he completely passed out and fell asleep, fainting due to the strange effects of the mysterious blue moon. His head hurt badly. He couldn't understand how much time had passed while he was unconscious and passed out. As it turned out, he slept for 2 whole days, and now every part of his body hurt. He was at a loss, not knowing what to do next. After Jack stood up, he saw a huge bough in front of him, causing him surprise and puzzlement. It was probably the influence of the tower. Jack heard that the shape of the plant could change depending on where it was grown. He assumed that the power of the tower influenced the onion. He decided to look at other seeds and was surprised to see as many as 52 of them, which gave him hope for survival. The guy decided to cut off the onion leaves, since they were blocking the light of the seeds. He couldn't help but notice how pungent the taste was. Jack was sitting on a stone, and just helped himself to fresh tomatoes, enjoying the juicy taste and forgetting about all the troubles. The sun did not penetrate the tower, but the moon occasionally shone, creating a kind of night on the floor. This phenomenon was called a blue moon. But today the moon doesn't appear until the 10th floor. The guy thought he appeared on the 1st floor, and also this dragon he saw, he definitely didn't dream it. When the towers first appeared 10 years ago, the Phoenix Guild enlisted 37 floors at once, showing their strength and power. Guilds hide information about floors after 30, but there is a lot of content on YouTube about the tower. From the 2nd to 10th floor there are skeleton warriors, from the 11th to 20th there are goblins, and from the 21st to 30th there are orcs. According to rumors, spiders begin to appear from the 31st floor, which makes traveling in the tower even more dangerous and exciting. But not a word about dragons. Everything around seemed unfamiliar and mysterious, as if he had found himself in another world, but the guy could not understand what floor he was on. Lizard monsters, similar to legendary dragons, hid somewhere in the depths of this mysterious reality. The guy felt like he was in a fairy tale. A surprised rabbit looked at him from above, and he was also here for the first time. When the rabbit jumped off, Jack did not hesitate and gave chase, trying to save this amazing creature from unknown dangers. However, the animal turned out to be not so in need of saving, and it seemed to rush not to Jack, but to the food that he had brought with him. The guy carefully broke off one leaf and handed it to the animal so that it could feast on it, easing the animal's hunger. When the rabbit gave a sign, it seemed to his friends, another comrade in arms instantly joined them, increasing their numbers. It was quite clear that these creatures were friends, united in this mysterious place, and sincerely rejoicing in their meeting. Diary of Survival in a Guy's Tower. Day 1, a couple of rabbits joined the guy, as if they were guarding his sleep, protecting him from nightmares. The rabbits worked with amazing determination in the guy's garden, helping him grow greens and fruits in this mysterious place. Jack was surprised at how cute the couple of rabbits were, but he still could not understand how they ended up next to him in this mysterious tower. The rabbits began to beg the guy to let them stay and live in this mysterious cave with him. The guy agreed, but on the condition that the rabbits would help him on the farm, although they would just need to trim the onions. The guy had a feeling that he was being manipulated, but he decided to trust these cute bunnies and see where this strange agreement would lead. The rabbits' watering can was magical and seemed to have an inexhaustible supply of water, which helped them always stay full and hydrated. And apparently the bunny wife's overalls have some kind of magical pockets, because she's constantly fishing out new farming gadgets from them. The rabbits impressed Jack with their speed and efficiency, and they quickly completed their duties on the farm, making it more prosperous. The main character asked the rabbits to dry everything they picked, but he could not understand why the potatoes had not yet sprouted. Everything around was so mysterious. But the tomatoes looked vigorous, they grew very well. Perhaps it was really thanks to the help of the rabbits and their hard work on the farm. Immediately after the guy told the rabbits that they could stay in the cave, they enthusiastically began to build themselves a house, creating a cozy shelter. And very quickly the house was ready, as if the rabbits had magical powers that allowed them to build elegant structures. The environment in the Black Tower was mercilessly unpredictable and full of secrets, which added to the mystery of the place. The guy did not lose hope. He had a plastic bottle of water and dry onion leaves. In this world, even such supplies could save a life. He decided to use the bottle as a focusing lens to start a fire, just like in the first wilderness survival episode on YouTube. When the guy failed to light a fire, his faithful friends, the rabbits, came to his aid, and together they managed to cope with this task. Deciding that he had a fire, he began to fry onions over the fire, enjoying the first warm and tasty food in this strange tower. After he tried this new dish, his taste buds seemed to fly into the eighth heaven with happiness, and he felt joy and gratitude towards his faithful rabbit friends. It was as if he had swallowed a sugar factory. A sweet horse seemed to be galloping in his mouth, and this sensation brought him real magic and pleasure. The rabbits also really liked the new dish in their assortment. After waking up in the morning, the guy immediately went to look into the garden, full of hope that the plants and rabbits would continue to surprise him. The green onions were collected, the tomatoes were watered, and finally the potatoes sprouted. This couldn't help but make the guy happy, and he felt grateful to his faithful rabbit friends and to this mysterious place. So much has happened recently. When they figured out how to make a fire, they created torches based on onions and lit up the entire cave. Now, thanks to the developed territory and good illumination from the light, they could walk freely and not be afraid of tripping. Jack was even able to catch one fish for a treat, a tasty addition to their diet in this mysterious place. So, he was able to fish in the cave, discovering another way to provide himself with food in this mysterious shelter. Soon the blue moon appeared again. Based on his rough calculations, it appears every 30 days, reminding him that time in this tower flows according to its own laws. He charged his phone, portable battery and laptop, taking every opportunity to keep in touch with the outside world and recording his amazing experience in this tower. It's understandable, but he tried to use the battery energy as economically as possible, realizing that it would not live long in this mysterious tower. Due to the lack of energy, he decided to use more classical methods and began to mark the days by carving marks on the rock to keep track of the time in this mysterious tower. Luckily, the pair of rabbits followed a strict schedule, going to bed at 7 p.m. and waking up at 5 a.m., which helped keep him from losing track of time in that black tower where the sun never set. And just a few days ago, a significant event occurred. A married couple of rabbits became rich with children, which added new inspiration to their lives. The bushes bloomed and now the tower looked like a flower bed. But it was important to pollinate all the flowers. Since there were no bees in this mystical tower, he had to do everything by hand, carefully transferring pollen from flower to flower. Since he stood there all day long, his back hurt unbearably. It would be great if bees flew into the cave. But this is too much to ask. After a long time, his tomatoes began to bear fruit, and he proudly harvested them from the garden, thanks to his efforts and patience in this mysterious tower. It was the day before the blue moon, and he was looking forward to this unusual event in his life in the Black Tower. The guy carefully prepared. Hoping that his camouflage would be enough, he said goodbye to the rabbits and said that they would see each other tomorrow, preparing for an adventure on the blue moon in this mysterious tower. Just in case, Jack hid all the strong-smelling things at the far end of the cave, but he could not understand how much time had passed. Now every minute felt like an eternity, and his anticipation became even more intense. At this time, an overly healthy bear appeared on the horizon, and Jack realized that he had to be vigilant so as not to get into an unpleasant situation with this powerful animal. Since the monster had not yet noticed the guy, he decided to hide in another place to avoid detection until it was too late. Quiet and slow, but he wasn't very good at it. Every time he picked up his backpack, a lot of things fell out of it, which, in principle, created a lot of noise and added to his nervousness. The bear immediately paid attention to the guy standing below, and his heart beat even faster when he realized that he was in the field of view of this powerful predator. It is unclear for what reasons, but Jack fell asleep as if nothing had happened, remaining calm within himself in this tense situation. The rabbits had no choice but to slap Jack in the face to wake him up and thereby warn him from possible danger. Oddly enough, the protagonist is instantly awakened by the rabbit's slaps, realizing that he needs to act quickly to avoid a collision with the bear. He couldn't understand what had happened and where the blue moon had gone, as if it was a strange dream or a time jump in his adventure in the Black Tower. He passed out, however, and his body again ached and ached, as if his adventure had been a real test of his physical condition. He tried to remember what happened last night, but his memories were confused and unclear, as if his mind was obscured by the secrets of the Black Tower. Basically, it's hard to forget when you see such a monster, and his terrifying encounter left an unforgettable mark on his memory, which practically did not eat him, and this was a real miracle in that gloomy place. The main character then almost gave his soul to God, being so frightened by the meeting with the bear and on the verge of death. He was unbearably cold, and he was trembling with fear and a sense of imminent danger in this freezing tower. The rabbit's wife immediately thought of lighting a fire to keep warm and drive out fear and cold from this gloomy atmosphere. After some time, the guy settled down to sit near the fire, wrapped in a homemade blanket, and this gave him some feeling of comfort and protection in this ominous atmosphere. The rabbits even brought him fried fish, showing care and devotion to their friend in this difficult situation. The monster found his cave. He was wondering if he sensed the presence of other monsters, or simply could not crawl into the narrow hole. But it was not a fact that he would be lucky next time. He should not rely only on luck if he wants to stay alive, because so much effort has already been spent on survival in this mysterious world. For now, all he can do is eat to survive, and every piece of food becomes a valuable resource for him in this gloomy world. When the guy returned, he was very surprised, because in front of him was a blue tomato, the size of a golf ball, and it was something incredible. It certainly looked cool, but he couldn't understand why the blue tomato appeared right here and now. The secrets of this tower only deepened. After some time, a system window appeared in front of the guy, which amazed him and raised many questions. He was informed that he had successfully completed the task of collecting fruits infected with the energy of the blue moon, and this message added even more mysteries to his adventure. His outstanding achievements attracted the attention of the tower manager, which meant that he could have new challenges and opportunities in this mysterious abode. From now on, he will be under constant surveillance by the tower manager, and after such information the guy was perplexed and slightly shocked. The guy was informed that he was not invited deliberately, and the manager intends to correct this misunderstanding, causing even more questions and uncertainty in his mind. It is clear that he was furious, because he had been in the cave for the second month, and they had only now discovered this mistake, which caused him to feel indignant and resentful. The guy burned with anger because his efforts were underestimated, and in another moment he realized that evil minds were plotting his murder. The main character is stunned by the realization that he almost went too far, making serious mistakes in his actions. He was informed that the manager was going to wake him up, and immediately after these words strange and incomprehensible phenomena began around him. Apparently, now the guy was officially considered awakened by the Black Tower, and his world was filled with unusual and mysterious events. Jack looked forward to being assigned to a new class, feeling excited about the expected discoveries, new acquaintances and exciting lessons. His eyes lit up as brightly as those of a child, full of surprise and delight at the exciting world of a new class. He became a tower farmer. The features of this class are disease resistance, closeness to nature, gaining experience when harvesting. Jack clearly did not feel happy about what he got, because he was expecting something much more significant and important. The system showed him his status window, which reflected his current performance and progress in recent tasks and tests. His talent was very strange. It was called ordinary, but it manifested itself in unusual and surprising ways. Some guy was a guest on a famous TV show, where he talked about his amazing, unusual talent and his path. The host began to imagine that today they had a special guest who frequented the tower despite his usual talent. The guy was asked what class he belonged to. He replied proudly that he was a farmer, and was improving his talent remotely by working on his skills in the field of agriculture. As it turned out, all this time Jack was imagining what it would be like in public if he actually had to declare his class as a farmer. The main character was incredibly angry at what was happening, since his expectations and hopes were destroyed by the new class. But he stopped in time, seeing that his rabbit friends were watching all this, expressing their amusement and joy. Even the adult rabbits' eyes were frightened, not to mention their children, who stared in shock at what was happening. Jack immediately felt guilty towards them for the fact that his appearance had so frightened and confused the rabbits. All this time he stood and looked at the tomato he was holding in his hands, but did not understand what to do with it. 168. They worked tirelessly to reap the first harvest, and hoped for a successful outcome of their hard work. Apparently, the guy had already accepted that he would have to be a farmer, and was preparing for the new reality and challenges of this profession. A sign appeared for him again, informing him of a new stage of his adventures in the world of farming and everyday work. As it turned out, in his hands he was holding magical cherry tomatoes that could bring good luck and prosperity to his new farming business. I was surprised when I found out that these tomatoes are not an unusual vegetable, but a magical item with amazing properties. It seemed like nothing, but this tomato increased the statistics of his characteristics and skills, making him stronger and more experienced. All this time, that same dragon was watching the guy, wisely studying his reactions to the magical properties of this amazing tomato. You could tell by his hand that he was slightly furious at how the tomato was being used without due respect. The guy's mood immediately lifted and he began to say that without the rabbits nothing would have happened, recognizing their important role in his success. The system appeared again for the main character, reminding him of his new tasks and opportunities in this amazing world. He received a task. He needed to deliver a fruit containing the energy of the blue moon to the director of the tower, and the reward for this task was a class skill, and in case of refusal of the task, simply death. The guy got a little nervous and asked if this was a joke, feeling wary of the task offered to him. After all, he didn't even have a choice. He was faced with a serious test that required making responsible decisions. He couldn't believe that the manager really didn't seem to care about his awakening or the consequences for him. After some thought, the guy nevertheless agreed to the terms of the system, realizing that he had no choice if he wanted to save his life. The guy completely forgot about the reward, about the class skill. He was so nervous about the threat of death that he didn't think about anything else. Jack was clearly not entirely happy with the reward he received, feeling that he was faced with a disproportionate risk and reward. Well, basically, what else could he expect from the farmer class, except perhaps something more interesting and exciting? The guy has already actively started hunting fish, realizing that this could be an additional source of food and resources for him. After awakening, he began to gain experience, and after catching 5 piranhas within a few days, he received the second level. The guy wanted to catch even more, but killing living creatures unnecessarily was not part of his principles, because fish was an excellent source of protein, so he treated fishing wisely and responsibly. Jack asked everyone to take their time. He noticed that all the rabbits started doing a lot of things when they got older, and so he wanted to give them time to grow and develop too. He also learned something new about rabbits, which added interest to the study of their behavior and characteristics. The girl had never heard of such monsters in the tower. Judging by the name, these are more friendly creatures engaged in farming rather than hunting. Most likely that's why they had not been heard of before. The main character didn't know how it happened, but he assumed that they had lost their home, were wandering around and suddenly found themselves with him. Jack wished with all his heart that they would learn to understand each other, because this was the basis for belonging and agreement. He suggested that everyone go to the farm, because today was an important day for all of them, and they could do it together. In the garden, almost all the vegetables have already reached ripeness, promising a good harvest and satisfaction from the farmer's work. Finally, he waited for the harvest time. They tried so hard for everything to work out. The harvest after a blue moon is not everything. The guy wanted to try to pick the fruit that the system was talking about, and find out what could happen as a result. The main character approached the tomatoes in order to finally harvest his first harvest, feeling the joy of well-deserved work and looking forward to new adventures. This was his first tomato, and it was also very ripe, which added flavor to the anticipation of the first bite. Gradually, over time, he had the opportunity to reach the branch and finally tear off his long-awaited gift of nature. Mysterious light points flickered in its red skin, emitting a mysterious light, like magical fireworks in the night sky. He tasted the magic tomato, and the miraculous powers within his body granted him invaluable powers for 10 amazing minutes. The main character realized that he has an unusual gift of collecting ripe magical cherry tomatoes to accumulate amazing experience. Jack realized that there were more mysteries in this problem than he had expected. Having already had the 4th level of experience, the guy realized that it was time to rest a little and think about a strategy for further adventures. Perhaps he should have tried all the tomatoes he collected, exploring their secrets and discovering new possibilities along the way. And so, realizing his forgetfulness, he remembered his faithful rabbit friends, who were always with him and helped him in every adventure. The guy suggested celebrating the first successful harvest of magic tomatoes with the faithful rabbits by organizing a small celebration in their honor. After a hearty dinner, the guy, having eaten to his fill, relaxed on the grass, enveloped in the night air, and enjoyed the moment. At that moment, a bright star flew in front of him, leaving behind a sparkling trail in the dark night sky. Surprised by such a sight, the guy forgot about everything and plunged into the world of magic that was playing out before his eyes. The evening was already approaching night, and Jack lay enjoying the tranquility, watching the funny actions of his faithful rabbit friends. He was surprised to realize that the kids were already old enough to help mom and dad and continue the wonderful farming tradition in the family. Succumbing to fatigue, Jack decided to take a nap. Another wonderful day had come to an end, and he felt satisfied with the hard but successful work done. Suddenly, a mysterious system window appeared in front of the guy, and he could not understand what was happening. The guy was overcome with rage when the system window informed him that his task had been completed without his knowledge or permission. Jack wondered if he could at least rest a little after the successful completion of the task. A busy day and unexpected events. At first glance, the guy was not particularly happy about the new skill, which the system called harvesting. He was puzzled. However, the next day, the guy realized that this new harvest skill was incredibly useful and helped in his farming business. This skill was activated every time he picked an unripe or overripe fruit. Thanks to this new skill, the main character received much more experience when collecting unripe fruits. Thanks to this skill, they were able to harvest tomatoes earlier, even before they were fully ripe, speeding up the harvesting process and increasing their productivity. After receiving the reward, it helped the guy a lot. Now he could collect as many as 200 tomatoes and spend them generously in the system. If only he knew that this was just the beginning. Because of the successful previous task, new, more interesting and challenging ones would immediately follow. Each time the tasks became larger and more complex, requiring more effort and perseverance from him. The Tower Survival Diary described how the protagonist was able to resist the will of the manager for the first time and began to defend his independence. He burned with indescribable rage, because the system demanded as many as 500 tomatoes from him, and he was at a loss, not knowing what to do. Jack worked hard for days on end to grow enough tomatoes and harvest the right amount for the system. His patience ran out, and he resolutely sent the system, refusing to provide the required number of tomatoes, expressing his principles. Jack began to completely ignore the system, claiming that he had no intention of providing them with vegetables, claiming that he simply planted the seeds. For his efforts, he received only pitiful compensation, which did not correspond to the work and energy that he put in. He told the manager to know that he was making a bad worker, rejecting unfair conditions and demanding respect. The guy could only offer 5 tomatoes, and promised to deliver the rest later, maintaining honesty and self-respect. According to the messages that were transmitted, it was clear that the manager was trying to apologize, realizing his mistakes and bad attitude towards the guy. Surprisingly, the manager turned out to be much more accommodating and simpler than the guy had imagined at the beginning. Day 91, Survival of the Main Character, 4th Blue Moon. The main character heard that people with a lot of energy can withstand the roar of a monster, so the guy ate tomatoes heavily, hoping that such situations would not happen again. Right before the guy's eyes, an ordinary unripe tomato magically turned into blue and ripe, striking him with an amazing visual effect. The guy couldn't wait to pick this amazing tomato, and even the potato leaves seemed to sparkle under the moonlight, calling for hasty action. The guy eagerly tore out the sweet potato and was immersed in admiration for its juicy aroma and wonderful taste. He felt inside him as if he had the whole world in his hands, filled with the splendor of nature and endless possibilities. To begin with, Jack completed the previous tasks, bringing all the remaining tomatoes, demonstrating his responsibility and diligence. The guy decided to eat cherry tomatoes, enjoying their juicy taste and bright colors that lifted his mood. Late in the evening, the guy was sitting by the fire with his friends, saying that it was a pity that he didn't have foil on hand, but he had a lot of multi-purpose onion leaves. When the main character invited his friends to eat fried potatoes, the rabbit man stood in front of him and told only one guy to eat the potatoes. The guy was touched to the depths of his soul and said that only a rabbit cares about him and shows such care. It's good that the rabbits will never know that he has already sat down in one of the potatoes, keeping the secret of the fun moment. After a while, all the rabbits, including the guy, were lying on the floor, writhing in pain. The potatoes were too hot for them. They needed to focus on growing potatoes to improve their cooking skills and avoid unpleasant incidents. It was precisely the potatoes that all the rabbits ate that they decided to single out for more careful care and control in the future. From now on, they promised not to eat these potatoes, deciding to use them to further study and improve the growing process. Potato sprouts turned out to be the cripple's favorite treat, and at this rate they could have eaten all the sprouts. The guy promised to treat the kings to potatoes if they helped him plant and care for the sprouts, enriching the process with a special treat. It was clear from Jack that he had a cunning plan in mind, and his smile spoke of hidden intrigues and amazing ideas. It is clear that after such words the rabbits immediately began to help their friend, secretly preparing for an interesting and exciting adventure. The main character decided not to prune some of the onions, but to wait until they bloomed so they could collect the seeds. Perhaps the seeds would become an important item in their future adventures. When one of the rabbits decided to eat some leaves, the father noticed this and decided to punish the lazy one for disturbing the order. And the guy, in turn, began to collect tomatoes, continuing his work and implementing his plan to improve the harvest. At the 8th level, his rank increased, and all this was due to simple gathering and diligence in caring for the crops. This was clearly an excuse to give myself a break and have a snack while enjoying the results of my efforts. The main character was slightly alarmed by the notice that the manager was curious about what he would cook today, causing him some concern. He skewered roasted cherry tomatoes, adding spices to enhance the flavor, creating a great dish. When everything was ready, all the rabbits, as the guy promised, received their food and enjoyed delicious fried cherry tomatoes on skewers. They are also comfortable to hold in your hand. They are hot, so before taking it is better to blow on them so that they cool down a little and do not get burned. Since there were enough potatoes planted, the guy decided that he needed to dig up some for dinner in order to cook something tasty and satisfying. Jack began to count all the potatoes and noticed that for the first harvest it turned out quite well. There were 5 in each planting. Not a single waste should be wasted, since every potato was a precious and valuable reward for him. Well, as it turned out, He needed to plant everything by hand in order to level up his skill and gradually become an experienced farmer. The sinister dragon suddenly stole the guy's idea, then transformed it by cooking juicy tomatoes on skewers. The dragon crushed the hasty conclusions and vomited them out. Feeling bitter, he soon realized that there was a sweet reward hidden inside the tomatoes. He should have taken a look at what people were doing, especially the guy. He flushed with anger when he saw that they had eaten potatoes without inviting him to join or sharing. The guy only had one potato left, so he turned to the manager, asking if he could get some kind of reward for it. The guy gave the potatoes to the manager, and suddenly a store with seeds appeared in the cave, which allowed him to make purchases without leaving the cave. Deciding to use a seed store, the guy began his inner gardening project, making his farming dreams come true. The guy discovered one tower coin, and, as far as he remembered, the value of such a coin was estimated at about $1 million. The guy began to think about whether it would be more profitable for him to keep this precious coin or spend it on something special. The main character finds himself at a dead end, unable to make a final decision on how best to proceed. With no options, he was left with only carrots, and the rabbits showed great interest in this delicious treat. The whole family began persuasion, trying to convince him to lay down the carrots. Without thinking too long, he finally decided to buy a carrot and shared it with the rabbits. Now everyone was unanimous in their decision to start growing carrots, and they began this exciting project with full determination. Several days have already passed since the main character planted the carrots, but the rabbits spent the whole day carefully watching the garden bed, despite the fact that the seeds had not even sprouted yet. The guy decided not to worry about this, relax and take a little nap, and then carefully water the tender carrot shoots and start trimming the onions in the garden. At this moment, when he was sleeping, the bee continued to disturb him, flying right in front of his face, preventing him from sleeping peacefully. Then he suddenly flared up in irritation. However, when he saw the cute little bee in front of him, his irritation turned into kindness and caution, and he began to carefully interact with it. The guy, of course, did not know that this bee was unusual and poisonous, and therefore his caution and kindness were genuine. Jack decided to immediately inform his friends that a dangerous creature was in his vicinity, so that they would be careful and not expose themselves to danger. However, he did not foresee that they would start running away long before he could express everything he had in mind. The main character, waving his arms, tried to expel the bee, which unexpectedly approached him. Trying to get his point across, he began to explain that his physique was extremely thin and, therefore, not tasty for a bee. After he handed the bee a seedling that was covered with flowers, she instantly calmed down and began to carefully examine it. After the system warned the guy that the bees were predatory, he looked a little puzzled at what had happened. He soon realized that the bee could be useful by pollinating flowers, and suggested that it fly to other flowers if it was hungry. Thus, I no longer had to crawl around the garden bed like a crayfish to take care of the flowers. Jack still held anger towards his friends who refused to help him with the bee. After some time, the bee returned and landed next to the guy. He became a little alarmed when she approached him, but Jack had nothing to worry about, because the bee had just settled down to sleep on his shoulder. He prayed that she wouldn't sting him. 120 days of survival pass, and a new family member joins them, bringing joy to their harsh reality. The guy had to periodically interrupt his work because of his children, who prevented him from focusing on tasks. He realized that he should not expect silence from them, because kids are always full of energy in their youth. It was at this time that a bee, having completed pollination, flew to the guy and sat down next to him. The bee has been living with them for several weeks now, bringing joy and usefulness to their family life and survival conditions. Every morning the bee flies to extract nectar from the flowers and in the evening returns to its forest located above the cave. One should consider the possibility that a bee may live alone without having its own bee colony nearby. A few days ago, the bee began producing honey, making it from nectar and food stored in the beehive. The onions and sweet honey created a unique combination of sweet and savory, highlighting the poisonous essence of the bee. Having gathered his courage, the main character decided that despite the danger of the poisonous bee, he could expand his farm even more. He believed that soon he would have so much honey that even the bears would feel jealous of his supplies. The main character realized that the time of the blue moon would soon come, filling the night sky with a mysterious light. These thoughts filled him with slight anxiety, and he hoped that this time the blue moon would not bring any trouble. On the 12th day of survival, he continued to fight for survival in difficult conditions. All food supplies were hidden, and the bee, having not flown for the last few days, was probably preparing for a blue moon, just like the guy. The main characters noticed that the rabbits suddenly began to make a lot of noise, and it was clear to them that it was time to return home, because food was already waiting for them. However, it was a surprise to the guy that the rabbits suddenly abandoned their children and ran away in fear. He could not understand how parents could leave their children unprotected at such a dangerous time. After this situation, he became even more careful than before, always on guard and ready for the unexpected. The moon changed the rabbits, turning them into huge monsters, forcing the main character to fight for his safety. The protagonist was filled with heat from his emotions, and he was ready for the most incredible tests. After a few seconds, the cute bunnies disappeared, and in their place there was only an empty and gloomy place. In their place, only merciless, bloodthirsty monsters arose, whose attacks posed a serious threat to the hero and the bee. After that, they seemed to begin to be reborn, and a powerful glow began to emanate from them, enveloping everything around them. And suddenly the monsters that the guy had seen disappeared, leaving only glowing creatures devoid of aggression and danger. Of course, he felt captivated, unable to take his eyes off this breathtaking spectacle. For one of them, the color changed to such an extent that it seemed like some kind of miracle, something magical and amazing. So, after 5 blue moons had passed since their birth, this apparently represented some kind of mystical rite of passage into adulthood. Deep down, the main character couldn't help but think that they had turned into terrible monsters, different from their former friends. And then, he began to hug and kiss each of them as a sign of gratitude for the fact that they stayed by his side. The next morning, the parents went outside to find out what happened to their children that night. At this very time they were sitting by the fire, their faces brightly illuminated by the flame of burned wood fuel. The guy suddenly had a bright idea to prepare a special dish, as a symbol of growing up, and offer it to his friends at this important moment. After he noticed that one of the rabbits suddenly appeared with a shovel in his hands, his legs nearly gave way and he almost lost consciousness. And soon everyone else also began to have a variety of different devices, as if out of nowhere. And so, when the rabbit farmer reaches adulthood, he gets his own item that cannot be borrowed. Jack remained perplexed, as he could not figure out which item the last of the rabbits had received. As it turned out, he had a huge hammer in his hands, which looked like a real surprise among the other objects. Obviously, this hammer clearly did not belong to a farmer's implement. It looked too unusual and impressive for such use. This king was called the Black Warrior, and his hammer became a symbol of his power and authority. Over time, all the rabbits who received their items began to work in the garden, bearing the fruits of their efforts for the common good. Some people diligently collected ripe tomatoes, while others carefully planted them, creating a well-coordinated team of workers. The guy asked the collected tomatoes to be poured into one pile to simplify subsequent processing and storage of the crop. Jack could hardly hold back tears of joy because the children had turned into such excellent helpers, willing to participate in the work with such zeal. However, it would be wrong to say the same about the Black Warrior, because he was the only one who did not have his subject for farm work, and this left him without something to do. As a rabbit warrior, he was ready for battle, but alas, there was no threat or enemy on the farm to face in battle. The pet tried to express something to its owner, devouring attention and attracting attention. He pointed to the pond, hinting at the possibility of hunting in it, because exploring the pond and its inhabitants could also be a kind of battle. The guy decided that he would lure the fish, and the rabbit, in turn, would do the fishing, creating an effective team for survival. A few minutes later, to their joy, there was the first victim. The fish was included in their well-deserved catch. The force of the blow was too great, and the fish, instead of falling into the basket, flew straight into the rock, causing surprise. The animal seemed to regard this as a job well done, and was ready to continue the hunt with the same enthusiasm. However, as it turned out, this was not at all the case, because only fragments of bones remained from the fish, and this was not the best result. The partners prepared dinner from what they managed to get, making the most of the available resources. Jack tried to encourage his friend, saying that there was no need to worry, because there was always an opportunity to learn and become better. The rabbits began to gradually get used to their new responsibilities and became more and more experienced and confident. After 125 days, the seed store reopened in their farming town, giving them the opportunity to enrich their experience and expand their planting arsenal. The guy again faced a difficult choice, and he was faced with a dilemma about how best to take advantage of the opportunity to purchase seeds for further work on the farm. The changed prices greatly confused the guy, because the first time it was not so expensive, and now he had to deal with higher costs. He only had 0.9 tower coins left and seemed to have no idea how he could earn more money. There are 3 ways that hunters can earn tower coins. The first way to earn coins is for the honor of defending them. The second way is to hunt monsters and sell their loot to traveling merchants or shops on the ground floor. The third way is to complete tasks, and this is what the guy does, trying to earn tower coins in this way. The guy suddenly remembered that the manager had already assigned him some task, and he must begin to complete it. He asked that, in addition to his assignments, he be given tower coins as a reward for his efforts and dedication. The manager said that he didn't yet understand what the guy was talking about, but he promised to give him the tower coins when he grew up and became older. Jack remained perplexed, not understanding how much longer he would have to wait and grow old to finally receive these long-awaited coins. The protagonist flushed with anger upon hearing such words and resolutely promised himself that he would find a way to earn tower coins on his own. Jack was at a dead end and saw no other way out but to be angry at everything around him, because his efforts seemed in vain. The guy decided to switch to solving pressing problems and overcome difficulties instead of wasting energy on anger and disappointment. He decided to start with something concrete and bought corn seeds, hoping that this would be the first step towards achieving his goal. And soon the farmer was holding corn seeds in his hands, ready for planting and the future harvest. He was now motivated and ready to work to make his farm successful. But first they decided to have lunch, and everyone present ate their fill, even so much that there was still some food left. Jack asked if there would be any problems if the bee returned home late. The animal immediately began to hug the guy and shows that she trusts him and is not afraid. Jack suddenly noticed a strange noise from above and instantly thought that it could possibly be something monstrous or dangerous. The stranger approached them with a request, looking nothing like a stray cat ready to steal their fish. Then this stranger began to go down to the guy, showing obvious interest in a conversation or some kind of joint activity. A traveling stranger came down and asked Jack if he would like to buy something or share anything of value. He introduced himself as Theo, a traveling merchant, and began to talk about his goods and services. This day, when Theo, a traveling merchant, came to the cave, turned out to be the very day that turned the guy's whole life upside down. The main character still remained in a stupor from what he saw, trying to comprehend all the changes that were happening around him. He had heard before about those who lived on the higher floors of the tower, but he never thought that the merchant would be an animal, and this was a real surprise to him. Theo had very cute eyes and soft, plump cheeks, which made his appearance even more attractive and friendly. The guy felt an irresistible desire to touch these fluffy pads on Theo's paws, and this desire was truly sweet and gentle. As it turned out, the main character was a real connoisseur of cats and had a special affection and love for them. He was informed that a new customer had appeared in the seed store, and he came in person to greet the main character and offer his services. The merchant admitted that he had not eaten anything since the morning, and now looks ridiculous in the eyes of the buyer, who probably invited him to share food. Jack immediately offered his guest fish to satisfy his hunger. When the guy tried to offer him a second fish, he refused, because he cannot encroach on the buyer's food. The main character could not agree with this and began to persuade the cat. The merchant was very full of 2 fish, and began to rest after such a sieve lunch. As it turned out, he ate as many as 5 fish. Now Theo didn't know how to thank the guy, but the main character was just glad that someone was able to get to them. Jack politely asked the cat to pay for the food. He asked whether he would pay for the 5 fish that he himself ate. The merchant clearly did not expect such a turn because she thought it was a treat. A strong circle of friends instantly formed around the main character, planning to prevent the cat from escaping and not letting him escape. The merchant, having arrived to collect the debt and find new clients, was eventually forced not only to pay the debt, but also to get involved in the business of embezzlement. But he was determined and refused to give up, determined to find a way to sell something important. Theo carefully arranged all his merchandise, carefully displaying it. A slight expression of surprise appeared on the guy's face when he saw this. Among these items, one enchanted glass stood out. When something hot or cold was poured into it, it maintained its temperature. The merchant treated the fan with such delight, as if it were some kind of magical artifact. Jack decided to intervene and tried to explain the whole situation to the merchant. He explained that all these items were actually garbage. Since these were things from the world outside the tower, they were not given much value. The main character passionately argued that there is no magic in these objects. The glass is just an air layer that maintains temperature. After some time, the fan suddenly turned off, implying that the batteries were depleted. The merchant was skeptical and did not believe it, remembering that some person claimed that there was definitely magic in these items. This clearly indicated that the merchant had been deceived. Jack was at a loss. He couldn't understand what made the cat suddenly burst into tears so loudly and sadly. The guy asked the merchant to tell him what happened and what could have caused the cat to behave so strangely. It turned out that the 75th floor is one of the neutral zones where special rules and laws apply. For a long time he has been trying to win the affection of Alice, the most beautiful cat in his village. He made every effort to attract her attention and make Alice pay attention to him. But Alice always denied his gifts. She didn't like any of them. The richest cat in the village, who stood among Theo's opponents, was the most influential and wealthy representative of the cat society. His gifts inspired her, and it was quite clear that Alice was already delighted with them. Later, she chose him over Theo, leaving him brooding and disappointed. The merchant was at a dead end, not understanding how to feel about the times they spent together. It seemed like nothing mattered to her now, and everything that was seemed false and empty. The merchant was persistent in his intentions and moved forward decisively. It turned out that she smiled at him only a couple of times, and he made up the rest himself. Alice clearly expressed her indignation, saying that she could not stand cheap cats that smelled like Sprat. When a rich guy stole his girlfriend, he decided to become a traveling merchant to gain wealth and return for revenge. To start this venture, he invested all his savings, 50 coins, purchased the necessary equipment and a license, and spent the remaining 5 coins on goods to sell. The cat began to remember how he came to the very person who deceived him, and memories of that moment surfaced. It turned out that this person was a strange and incomprehensible goblin, which made the situation even more mysterious and confusing. The man began to persistently persuade the guy, claiming that these items were extremely precious and valuable. Theo simply could not understand why the man was willing to sell these valuable items for such a low price. Moreover, he provided the merchant with a map showing the location of the seed store's new customer, demonstrating his honesty. Thus, he sacrificed his last funds in the hope of selling all these items, which made him come hungry because there was no money left for food. The main character began to console the cat, and even offered him more fish in an attempt to calm him down. The guy who foresaw this turn of events invited the cat to join their team, giving him a job and a new home. His story attracted Jack rather than repulsed him. The story turned out to be fascinating and incredible. Jack began to investigate, asking whether the merchant had purchased goods that he was unable to sell, and whether he had any money left for any other expenses. The guy decided to invest in this business, realizing that the more the merchant sells, the greater his profit will be. They agreed on 3 to 5% of total revenue. Theo was wary and did not want to fall into a trap, as happened with most of his previously acquaintances in life. The merchant set the condition that he would think about it if the guy brought him a couple more fish, but the guy even exceeded expectations, bringing as many as 15 pieces. In addition to the weekly payment, they could eat from them every time they came, which made their offer more profitable. The merchant was too engrossed in the fish and did not realize that he had signed the contract without due consideration. The guy had heard that the contracts signed in this tower were almost impossible to break, which made him worry. Jack asked his partner not to worry, assuring him that sales would most likely increase and everything would be fine. The main character happily began showing off his garden, talking about the plants he grows and his agricultural hobby. The tomatoes were first in line, and he offered to sell them for 0.01 coins each. For the first transaction, the merchant had to collect as many as 1,000 tomatoes, which represented a considerable amount of work and effort. It turned out that Theo had a magical cloak that easily absorbed all the products, leaving his appearance unharmed. It was an extremely convenient device that greatly facilitated work and ensured efficient storage of products. The merchant, having collected everything he needed, set out to do his job, full of determination and enthusiasm. On the 38th floor of the tower a few days later, some heroes fought with a huge monster. After the victory, they began to collect useful items that fell from the defeated monster. At this time, Theo appeared from the bushes, offering to purchase a variety of useful items. The girl reacted very nicely and favorably to the merchant, appreciating his offer. As the guy said, his appearance instantly attracted their attention, leaving a positive impression on the girls. The moment the merchant removed the ripe tomatoes from the basket, the leader of this extraordinary team decided to leave the place. Warning against too hasty judgments, the trader called for opening the status window to clarify information about tomatoes. Jack confidently told himself that Theo was capable of success, and his premonitions turned out to be completely correct. At first glance, these tomatoes seemed to be just minor spells, but they secretly promoted the burning of 1 g of fat and protected the body. And there were no side effects, other than a pleasant and excellent taste that saturates every wonderful delicious bite. Confident that they would be quickly sold out, he foresaw how everyone would eagerly eat this delicious delicacy of the mouth-watering tomato. Nothing can stop a person in his quest to lose weight, because internal motivation and willpower are indestructible. Of the 1,000 carrot seeds purchased, only 700 sprouted, but each of them promised to exceed expectations with its juicy and colorful roots. And of the 1,200 tomatoes that the guy planted, only 732 took root, but they promised to be rich in taste and aroma. Corn and sweet potatoes sprouted in about the same ratio, somewhere between 60 and 70% of the total seeds planted. It appears that in this tower all plants grow at approximately the same level of prosperity and development. Of course, it would be great if more plants sprouted. Perhaps the reason lies in the insufficient level of farming science, or in the infertility of the soil in this cave. Moreover, having a traveling merchant in this so-called state, it is necessary to harvest as often as possible to ensure a constant supply and variety of goods. The Black Warrior was completely dedicated to his work, completing tasks quickly and with high efficiency, like a professional master of his craft. The guy enthusiastically and joyfully congratulated the rabbit on reaching a new level, expressing his joy for his success. If Theo sold coffee in joints, he would have made back all the money long ago. Your business would be so popular. A blend of instant coffee, thick poisonous bee honey and refreshing spring water, the perfect combination of bitter and sweet creates an amazing taste experience. Just one sip quenches hunger and thirst at the same time, filling the body with energy and satisfaction. Since Jack failed the last task, the manager realized that after the deal with the merchant he was no longer needed. The manager, realizing the importance of the work done by the guy, sincerely thanked him for all his efforts and contribution to the business. At one time, several goblins gathered to discuss where Theo might have gone and began to develop possible theories. The man decided that he would buy him a bottle of milk, offer him another good deal, and was even ready to borrow money, and then make him hunch over and pay off the entire debt, creating an unpleasant situation for Theo. The man decided to look into the ranking table of traveling merchants to assess his chances and position in this competitive field. When he saw that the cat was higher than him in the ranking, rage flared up in him. He could not believe that he could sell his things against such a background. The guy was a little disappointed when Theo didn't arrive on time, which he agreed on, and began to worry about what was happening. Jack thought it would take him a few days to sell all the stock, but when he returned after 2 weeks, 4 of which he was absent, he couldn't believe that all the stock was sold out on the first day. The guy said that if his partner did not want to see him in a bad state, then it was best to quickly resolve the situation and sell the goods. Soon people will find out that it is Jack who grows magical cherry tomatoes that can bring amazing miracles and joy. But it was clear from the merchant that he was clearly not happy about this discovery and was nervous, worried about the consequences. For newcomers to the guild, information about the manufacturer is secret. In order to protect beginners from experienced traders, Jack's name will remain a secret. If Evil Jack finds out about this, Theo could say goodbye to the bonus and his own safety. He had to make every effort to reveal the farmer's name, the only way to earn 1,000 coins in the tower and become a mid-level merchant. At this time, 4 partners fighting that creature stood and discussed something over a cup of coffee, sharing their thoughts. The leader noticed that a message had arrived on his phone, drawing his attention to possibly important news. A man burst into tears of happiness because his daughter, who was usually angry about diets, called him affectionately because of the cherry tomatoes that helped her lose weight. Last time he bought only 20 tomatoes, leaving them to his comrades. But he did not foresee that his daughter would like them so much. Now he needs to take much more. One of the guys shared tomatoes with a girl he had his eye on for a long time, and they are already dating, enjoying the magical taste together. The leader announced that they urgently needed to go to the 38th floor, indicating the priority of the task and encouraging them to take action. The partner asked the boss when they planned to return, expressing interest in future activities and schedules. After all, they had already prepared the tower coins to pay for the tomatoes, demonstrating readiness and organization. The merchant began to think about how he could earn a whole 1,000 coins, and began to build a plan of action to achieve his goal. The bag can hold a maximum of 1,500 tomatoes. At this rate he will have to run back and forth at least a dozen times. When the merchant learned that a group of people had spent 3 days getting to him for tomatoes, he was slightly taken aback by the unexpected fascination with his product. Since he needed to earn more money, he did not report that the price of tomatoes had increased, surprising the group. Now 1 tomato costs 0.07 tower coins, causing confusion among buyers with its unexpected price increase. He hoped that he had not gone too far with the price, and that they would buy everything from him, trying to find a balance between profit and demand. It is not surprising that such a good product is not sold for next to nothing. Unless they buy it now, no one knows when the next opportunity will arise. The leader agreed that in 10 days they would expect the main batch of tomatoes to arrive, giving the team hope for a successful development of events. He needs to quickly move up the ranks in order not to hide the name of the tomato manufacturer and maintain his position in the business. He was informed that he was very similar to another cat, causing surprise and interest in the mysterious incident. Theo was offered some very tasty sweet bar. It's clear that he immediately liked the new delicacy. He began to ask if there were any other such delicacies. For the first time, the girls saw a mysterious guest enter the mysterious tower, carrying with him delicious treats for cats. The talented guy taught the black rabbit special fuse techniques, adding mystery and magic to his art. Naturally, for safety reasons, he temporarily closed the hole from which aggressive piranhas climb, avoiding a possible attack by these dangerous creatures. The guy's soul sank to his feet, because he thought that the piranhas were about to tear the black warrior apart, devouring him mercilessly. Every time he remembers this, he trembles, as if he is again in that terrible situation. He remembered that he had not seen bees in these parts for a long time. Perhaps something had happened to them, causing his concern. He had not seen the bee for a long time and thought that she might have had children, new inhabitants of the hive, continuing this world. He asked her to come out to him for a minute, feeling the desire to share this thought, to feel closeness and understanding. But for unknown reasons, they were very angry and suddenly began to attack the guy, shrouding him in fear and uncertainty. Just when Jack thought he was done for, a bee with the likeness of a human flew out of the hive, bringing hope and something mysterious. She was the queen of poisonous bees, emitting a brilliant light and wielding power over this dangerous hive. The poison bee is a true predator of insects. It hunts its prey using its poisonous weapon. The dragon did not understand anything, because there was not a word about them in the book. His world was full of mysteries and secrets. He considered that it was not dangerous, and limited himself to simple observation for now. Later he decided to ask his grandmother to unravel this mystery. When the bee began to feed on nectar from the guy's farm, it was an unexpected moment that opened up new perspectives in their life together. After every meal, her body began to emit a strong aroma, and she began to increase in mass. Because of what the queen got into with her, now she herself can continue the family line. That day I decided to leave and live on my own. Jack's cave seemed like a safe enough place for her to start a new hive, and experience the most important moment in your life in it. The pain of the transformation. Her body was transformed so she became the queen of poisonous bees that they see now. The guy congratulated her on the transformation, even though the circumstances were strange. The bees immediately rushed to hug the guy in order to express their trust in him. A few days later, one of the rabbits showed the guy that a carrot had grown, but it was unusual and purple, which could not help but attract attention. For this reason, they woke him up earlier in order to show such a phenomenon. This carrot was called a dexterity carrot, which meant that it was quite useful. The main character received not 50 but as much as 70 experience points for collecting it. He decided to provide this carrot to the rabbits, and thank them for their efforts. One of the rabbits began to cut it equally among everyone. He was clearly a master of his craft. Even the guy noticed that the rabbit with the sickle was a real boss. This time 5 blue tomatoes grew, which couldn't help but rejoice. Jack provided them to the manager, as he requested. He was slightly surprised by the words that the manager promised him to think about whether he could be given a skill. When Theo came to the cave, an angry flock of bees immediately attacked him, and then the guy remembered that they still had not seen him, and therefore considered him an enemy. Hugging him, he introduced the merchant to the bees and said that he was not an enemy. The main character began to squeeze the cat, but the first thing was business, and asked him to brag about his successes. The merchant received as many as 75 coins. He added that since people had been waiting for him for several days, he thought of it and sold the items for 0.02 coins more. As it turned out, the guy was already aware of everything. Still, the manager can be useful, and it's not a sin to share blue tomatoes with him for such information. And Theo began to eat his delicacies that the girl gave him. Jack began to wonder where he got such delicacies from. He was clearly a little unhappy that people fed him. You can carry something into the tower in 2 ways. When you fall into the portal, the guy also ends up here with a backpack. But the second method is if the awakened hunter brings them with him to the tower. But they say that the total weight of the things brought in is limited to only 1 kilogram. Usually, all sorts of little things are brought into the tower. For example, special smartphones, and all sorts of different things that can be useful in the tower. That is, someone brought treats to the tower to treat the cat. Theo still figured out that the guy also needed to offer something.